What? This is our father's house. How could you ask us to leave?
Yeah, that's true, but then I was his wife as of the time his passing, and according to his will, earn the right to ownership of his house, and every account of which I'm a signatory. And guess what? I'm a signatory on all his accounts.
Will? What will? My name is Lily Rivers, and I'm a 22-year-old photographer. I'm the first of 3 children, with my younger siblings being twin girls. My father was a reputable pharmacist, and my mother, an editor in the local tabloid. We weren't exactly rich, but we were more than comfortable, as we could afford just about all our needs and wants. We almost never had any reason to be engaged in an argument as a family until my father made a shocking announcement one evening at dinner. Dad, I think you're misunderstanding Laura and Laurel. I believe they're simply asking why we need a maid because, truth be told, we don't.
The last I checked, you refused to go to college to study law as I'd wished. So whatever makes you think you could be an advocate for them or a judge in this matter, as a matter of fact.
Mom? Laurel was the younger twin and our last born. I'd lost count of the number of times she'd manipulated a situation to her advantage through Mom.
I'm sorry, kids, but this is a decision your father and I took, and which would prove to be perfect in the long run.
Mom's reply instantly made us give up in concession of defeat and get up from the table. I don't know if it was anger or some form of protest, but my sisters and I thought we could get Dad to change his mind. Well, guess what happened the next day? We got home at the end of our daily routine to find a young lady home. She was really pretty, and while she was much younger than Mom, I was nothing close to being age mates with her. The deed had been done, and with nothing else left to do, my sisters and I agreed to cooperate and accept her. And just like that, we had a maid. Hi, I'm Lily, and these are my twin sisters, Laura and Laurel.
I don't care.
What was that for?
Neither myself nor Laurel had an answer for Laura's question. The only person who could have given the answer was the maid. She had walked off almost as soon as she'd said that. We assumed she was in a bad mood at the time and decided to try to get along with her, but that never happened. Despite all our attempts to get close, the maid pushed us away. About 2 months later, Mom revealed the most heartbreaking news to us.
I'm dying of cancer. The doctor says I have barely a month. I'm sorry, I should have told you guys earlier. That's why we hired the maid.
What?
Your father and I decided to keep it a secret, but with only little time left, I feel you all have the right to know.
We didn't believe it until she took off her wig. Until then, we had never told our parents about the cold attitude of the maid towards us. But with the news we'd just received, we didn't hold back anything. Mom smiled and asked us not to be paranoid and laughed it off. We confronted Dad as soon as he returned from work, but he quickly got all emotional and asked us to forgive him as well for not telling us earlier. About the maid, he didn't believe us too. A huge disappointment indeed. Mom died 3 weeks later, but in a rather disappointing twist of events, Dad and the maid married less than 5 months later. Dad, how could you? It's not even been up to a year since Mom passed on and you've already moved on. Did you ever love her, or do you miss her at all?
You're glad she's gone, right? For you, it's not a loss. Simply good riddance, huh?
To be honest, Dad, I don't care if you married the same day as Mom died or on her funeral even. I'm only disappointed in your choice. Our maid. The same lady whom we told you about her cold attitude towards us. What do you think she'll do to us now that she's our stepmom? I can't even say it.
You're all growing, and believe me, it's only a matter of time until you all understand. Losing a loved one is never easy. I mourn your mother every day, and it's never easy, you know? I was thinking getting married again would ease some of the pains. Oh Lord, I don't know. Grace is a nice lady. Forget your negative perceptions about her, and I bet you'll all see her and love her for the kind woman she is.
And so it was that the unaffectionate maid became our stepmother. We knew we were in for a Cinderella story, but we were unsure if there'll ever be a happy ending for us, especially with reality having no fairy godmothers. Rather surprisingly, the first month was spent in peace between us and our new stepmother, and mostly because we were very careful to keep ourselves far away from her. My sisters and I spent most of our conversations debating if getting married to our father had actually changed her. But while none of us could give any accurate answer, she stepped in and did justice. Or can her evil deed be called that? We were seated in the living room and watching our favorite TV show one afternoon when the TV set went off abruptly. We turned around to find our stepmother standing with the remote in hand.
Do you lazy brats ever do anything other than watch television?
My sisters wanted to answer her, but I quickly signaled them to stay silent and decided to take matters into my own hands instead. Tell me something, Grace. Do you even love our father, or are you only in it for his fortunes? I regretted saying that almost as soon the words escaped my mouth. I knew I had to confront her, but maybe I should have premeditated the whole thing rather than rely on my impulse. A voice in my head asked me to apologize to her, but seeing the look of shock and surprise on her face made me feel a little sense of victory. And I at once resolved to not take back anything I said, even if I suddenly had the power to turn back the hands of time.
What did you just say to me, you little witch? And did you just call me Grace?
Yes, she did, and what are you going to do about it, Grace?
Come on, is your name not Grace? Oh, maybe you'll prefer something along the lines of Gold Digger, huh?
I'd taken matters into my hands at first because I was trying to protect my younger sisters from getting involved, but somehow I was glad to have them as my sidekicks. Grace, after a moment of being too stunned to speak or react, got over her shock and without any warning, swung at Laurel and managed to connect her palms to her cheeks in a hard slap. That was all it took to trigger us and let us turn on her and give her the beating of her life.
What is this nonsense?
The last thing we expected or wished for was having Dad walk in on us, but as fate had it, that was exactly what happened. We all froze and watched him help a bruised and battered Grace get back to her feet. Her cheeks were swollen, a wrist dislocated, and she'd suffered a black eye too. As expected, Dad was mad at us and didn't even bother to listen to our side of the story. It was disappointing that he believed the lie cooked and fed to him by Grace. He didn't tell us what she said, but of course there was no way she was going to give him a true account of what happened. Anyways, he got us punished and cut our monthly allowance by over 50%. We protested, but as always, it didn't matter. Life didn't get any easier, and with us waking up each dawn to Grace as our stepmother, it seemed like an eternal cycle of doom, until we had to leave the house at least. We were lucky she never brought that up. A year later, Dad's health suddenly deteriorated, so much that he was confined to a wheelchair. We spent virtually half of our family's fortunes on his treatment until Grace stepped in one day and put an end to it. We threatened to report her to the authorities, but unknown to us, she'd managed to make herself a signatory to all of Dad's account, and so told us how she reserved the right to do as it pleased her with the available funds. 3 months later, Dad lost the fight and passed on. We blamed Grace for his death, but like she told us one day, we had more things to worry about. What? This is our father's house. How could you ask us to leave?
Yeah, that's true, but then I was his wife as of the time his passing, and according to his will, earned the right to ownership of his house and every account of which I'm a signatory, and guess what? I'm a signatory on all his accounts.
Will? What will?
Just like Laurel, I was equally surprised to hear about a will, as was Laura. Dad had never mentioned it, and while we believed it had to be somewhere, we never expected our bully of a stepmom to be in possession of it, not to mention having any claim in it. Or as things had turned out, everything. I don't believe it. Let me see it. She boldly gave the document to me. First thing I did was look over the signature, and even though I knew it could be faked, I was convinced of its authenticity. A bead of tears rolled down on my cheeks, and my sisters quickly came over to have a look too. We felt betrayed by Father and wondered if she'd used any diabolical powers on him. When do we leave?
As much as I want you little brats out of my life already, I'll be generous enough to give you a whole month to prepare yourselves. 30 days and I can say good riddance.
My sisters and I spent the next days talking to our father's close associates, but somehow, nobody offered to help, not even the people whom he'd brought up from nothing. We phoned a few relatives who lived really far away, but just as his close associates, we had no luck. As we entered the final week, we prayed for a last-minute miracle, and boy, did it come. We were home one day when a gray-haired man showed up at the front door. Grace had stepped out, so we welcomed him in and wondered what was his business when he insisted on staying until she returned. After over 2 hours of waiting, the front door opened and in walked Grace.
Hello, I'm Barrister Wells, personal legal representative of my client, the late Mr. Rivers, and I'm here to read his will.
Grace hit back at him rudely and claimed he was an imposter hired by us. She even threatened to call the police on the barrister. Wells ignored all her threats and proceeded to read the will. It turned out that Grace had faked the one she had. The house belonged to us, and our father had secretly signed an agreement with his bank to annul every signatory linked to his account exactly 30 days after his death, and transfer all his wealth to the signatories stated in his will. All his investments were made in the names of all of us, his daughters, and for Grace, all he gave to her was the ring he'd gifted her on their wedding, and it was neither diamond nor gold. At the end of reading, Grace insisted on being scammed and threatened not to leave.
You have until tomorrow to leave peacefully, else it's going to be prison for you, I promise.
We woke up the next day to a fire alarm. Fortunately for us, the fire department arrived on time and quenched the fire before it became something to worry about. The cops arrived few minutes later and, upon my sister's claims, moved in to arrest Grace, who pleaded innocent as she was forced into the patrol car and led to the station. I can't believe Grace tried to burn down this place just because we asked her to move out.
Well, she didn't. I woke up early today and called the fire department. I waited for a few more minutes before starting the fire, knowing fully well that they'd arrive before it becomes something to be concerned about.
You evil genius, why did you do it?
Easy. That was my way of taking revenge on that witch. She's been a thorn in our lives, but now we're safe.
So apparently my sister had set up Grace just so she could be taken to prison, because the police had to believe the fact that she wanted to burn the house since she had lost it legally. And so Grace was locked up for 2 years. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe to the channel.